You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, the news does not get much worse than this for Donald Trump's attorney. Can you explain what just happened to him in court?
Yeah, Brian, an appellate judge in New York State Court just suspended former Trump lawyer Kenneth Chesebro from the practice of law, effective immediately and lasting indefinitely. And we can talk more about why that is in a minute. But our viewers will probably remember Kenneth Chesebro is not only one of the architects of the fake elector scheme, the criminal scheme by which Trump and Giuliani and Sidney Powell and other Trump aligned lawyers tried to help Donald Trump steal the 2020 presidential election. And, for the crimes he committed, Kenneth Chesebro was indicted down in Georgia as a RICO co-defendant with Trump and Rudy and Sidney Powell. A total of 18 RICO co-defendants participated in this criminal scheme to try to steal the 2020 election. So just today, a New York appeals court judge announced that Kenneth Chesebro, given the crimes he committed down in Georgia, and most importantly, Chesebro pleaded guilty to conspiring to filing false documents in furtherance of the scheme, the fake elector scheme to try to steal the 2020 presidential election. Kenneth Chesebro pleaded guilty. There was a factual basis for his plea as laid out by the prosecutor at the time Chesebro entered his guilty plea. And Chesebro admitted to having committed that crime. So it was a knowing, intelligent, and voluntary guilty plea. The judge accepted the guilty plea, found him guilty, and sentenced him ultimately to 5 years probation. In my opinion, that is an unduly light sentence. He spent no time behind bars, but 5 years probation, a $5,000 fine, and 100 hours of community service. So Kenneth Chesebro is a convicted felon. Then the case moved up to New York, not the criminal case, but the disbarment case. And notice was filed for him to basically show cause why he should not be suspended from the practice of law in New York. A hearing was held. He had every opportunity to make his arguments. He urged the court not to suspend him, but we just got this ruling from an appeals court in the state court of New York. His name is Robert Mayberger, and he just held, quote, Chesebro is suspended from the practice of law, effective immediately and until further order of this court. So bye-bye, Kenneth Chesebro, from practicing law in New York. And let's hope, Brian, this is a cautionary tale to the lawyers that Donald Trump is probably assembling as we speak to launch yet another nefarious, baseless, fraudulent attack on the results of the 2024 presidential election.
Which raises the obvious question, do you think that this will serve as anything of a deterrent for these lawyers who, to your exact point, are working right now on their little secret, which of course includes ways that Donald Trump can subvert the election results yet again?
Brian, it's hard to understand why any lawyer would want to go the way of Kenneth Chesebro, Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani. Remember, Rudy was disbarred in both New York and Washington, D.C. So why in the world other lawyers would sign up to do Donald Trump's corrupt bidding to try to steal the 2024 election is beyond me. But I can't look into the minds of the lawyers that Donald Trump has been courting and urging to do his dirty work this time around. Maybe for some of them, the proximity to power or the possibility of proximity to power in the event Donald Trump can somehow either win or steal the election. I think steal is far more likely than win the election proper on the votes. But it's beyond me why anybody else would want to sign up to become part of the club that Rudy and Sidney and Kenneth are now members of.
Well, it's the same logic that applies to these poll workers, for example, who are going to put their livelihoods, their freedom, their jobs on the line for Donald Trump. I think it's in hopes that in the event Trump might win, then they know he would protect them. And so they're kind of just laying it all out on the line, knowing that best case scenario, Trump wins, and not only do they not get prosecuted, they probably get rewarded with some cushy job. We've already seen reporting, and we've spoken about it in our previous Legal Breakdown episodes about Judge Cannon possibly being elevated all the way up to the Attorney General if Trump wins. That's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, honestly, we've seen so much timidity by Democratic attorneys general that, like, what what do they really have to worry about? It's taken so long before any movement happened, even with regard to Donald Trump. Merrick Garland hasn't done a single thing. He had to wait until Jack Smith was appointed several years after the insurrection against the U.S. government before a finger was lifted against him, to the point where now we are right up on the eve of the election, and still none of these cases have gone to trial. Still, we haven't seen any accountability for what happened on January 6th and blocking a free and fair certification of an election. Still, we haven't seen any accountability for the classified documents being stolen and brought to Mar-a-Lago. So I think best case scenario, they'll be fine, and worst case scenario, it's probably not going to be that bad.
You know, I couldn't agree with you more that the timidity of the Department of Justice, and that's giving the Department of Justice under the leadership of Merrick Garland every benefit of the doubt, calling it timidity. I don't know what it's a product of. The inaction, the abdication of the responsibility to protect our free and fair elections and to hold accountable the folks who committed crimes, to try to, override the expressed will of the American voters in 2020. I can't for the life of me understand why we have come to this point where we have enabled, indeed encouraged, Trump and other nefarious actors to try it all over again. But that is where we are. But there are two things that I think are different this time around. One, Joe Biden is the president, and he will be in control of all levers of government, including law enforcement and military, come November 6th and right up until January 20th, when the new president is inaugurated. So do not expect Trump and company to be able to launch the attack on the certification process and get away with it, and damn near have dozens of police officers killed in the process on January 6th, 2021. That's not going to happen this time. And here's the other thing, Brian. I firmly believe Kamala Harris will win not only the popular vote, but the Electoral College, and will be sworn in as the next president. So anybody like Chesbrough, like Rudy, like Sidney Powell, like John Eastman, like Jeffrey Clark, and any other dirty lawyer who wants to join Donald Trump's conspiracy in 2024, just like they did in 2020, they will be contending with a former prosecutor in the Oval Office, who I have every reason to believe understands the need for promptly holding accountable the people who try to destroy our democracy. And, they're not going to get the easy ride that they sure appear to have been given by Merrick Garland's Department of Justice. Things are about to change. I believe we're about to come into the light. And, I think we need to recognize the need for prompt law enforcement of some of these most dangerous actors. We didn't get it in 2020, but I'm pretty darn sure we're going to get it in 2024.
And let's finish off with this. Is there some standard that the bar could, or should be setting now with regard to these crimes against democracy? I'm sure that this isn't something that the bar has had to contend with. Any of these state bars have had to contend with, because not before Donald Trump had this ever been an issue. But now, because we have so many lawyers, we have so many Sidney Powells, Kenneth Chesbroughs, Jenna Ellis's of the world just coming forward, Rudy Giuliani's, and committing crimes against democracy, is there some need now to set some new standard, some zero tolerance threshold that they can put forward as a bit of a warning for these lawyers who do decide to use their immense privilege as people who can practice the law in this country, the people who have the ability to wield power that can take away someone's freedom in this country. That's an immense power that these attorneys wield, to let them know that there is a new zero tolerance policy threshold with regard to crimes against the country itself.
Yeah, it's a great question. So in one sense, the legal bar, that is the test or the standard for law enforcement or bar counsel to move forward on either criminal conduct, if it's law enforcement, or ethical misconduct, if it is bar counsel. The standard or the test, the bar, so to speak, will always be set at the same place. For example, probable cause will always be probable cause. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt will always be proof beyond a reasonable doubt. But here is where I think perhaps the approach needs to change and will change. We can now say definitively that there are lots of lawyers out there who are willing to commit crimes, file bogus lawsuits, violate all of the ethical canons of our practice as lawyers to try to ensure that their politician of preference takes power. That is something we have not seen until Donald Trump. I believe against that backdrop, all of the systems of both government and state bar council, who administer all of the ethical rules and canons of each of the attorney bars in the 50 states, I believe they will be all the more ready to move out and move out promptly and definitively if these lawyers who are now on notice of just how damaging to our democracy and our profession it is to have these lawyers go in and just mess with an election by filing fraudulent lawsuits and lying and injecting fake sworn certificates, fake elector certificates into the process. I have to believe Bar Council in the 50 states will also learn that if lawyers are going to be willing to do it, we institutionally need to go at it hard, and we need to go at it 100 miles an hour as soon as it becomes apparent that they have engaged in this conduct, not lag behind, particularly not waiting for congressional investigations to lead the way for law enforcement or bar counsel. No, I do think people will be viewing the nefarious conduct by Trump lawyers, Trump-aligned lawyers this time, in a whole new light.
Perfectly put. For anybody watching right now, to stay on top of any updates we get here with regard to either Trump's lawyers or efforts by those in Trump's orbit to, again, subvert the election results for their own personal political benefit, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on this screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.